Please welcome to the stage Chris Fox and Nick Clifford from Phoenix Labs. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Absolutely.
Nick, good
Thanks
to meet
for having
you.
us.
And Chris, good to meet
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Thanks for coming down. You guys have a Vancouver-based studio, and you've been working on this game for a while. It's out there now, and people can play it. It's free to play.
Yep.
So you can download this as you're watching the show right now, actually,
Yep,
if you
sure
wanted to
can.
do that. But Phoenix Labs has got an interesting backstory, doesn't it? It was created by a bunch of veterans. It wasn't like some bunch of noobs coming up with a cool idea.
Yeah. So cool thing about Phoenix Labs
It's a great name, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't take credit for it,
Yeah.
unfortunately. We've all worked together from EA to BioWare, Blizzard, Capcom. We've all spent a lot of time shipping many games together.
Mm-hmm.
So when we all decided to strike out on our own and essentially do it again, we know who to pick up the phone and call. And
The mix at Phoenix Labs, it's not just a bunch of Vancouver developers. You guys are based here, headquartered here, but you have another studio as well, right? In California?
yeah, so we started here in Vancouver,
Yep.
and we opened up our San Mateo office, which is down near San Francisco.
Okay.
A little over a year ago. We got about 10 to 12 people down there now who
Okay.
are kind of across multiple disciplines. And then we've got a whole host of people remote as well.
Oh, yeah.
Toronto, Edmonton, Portland.
You're talking about a persistent online game with Dauntless, and I guess you need to have, skilled people in lots of different places, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So the fires could be put out anywhere they occur out there.
Yeah, and what we realized, it's always challenging when you have people in different locations, different time zones, et cetera.
Yeah.
But what we realized is the people are more important than the location. So we've kind of purpose-built
Yep.
a lot of our internal structure and process around having like a digital workspace.
Fantastic. Nick, where did you work before you started working?
Yeah, so also got my start at EA.
Okay.
Worked on, I think my first title was Command and Conquer Generals once upon a time,
Wow.
going way back.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I started at the Los Angeles studio.
Cool.
Worked with a lot of the old school CNC crew, Westwood Studios crew, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Worked on Medal of Honor a bit.
Right on. We had Tarny Williams in here
Oh,
a
cool.
little while ago.
Yeah, yeah. Worked on Medal of Honor, Crisis for a while. Joined the BioWare team, which is where I met Jesse, Robin, and some of the other folks from BioWare.
Cool.
Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Need for Speed a little bit. Worked on Rivals, which is one of the more recent ones. And then prior to joining Phoenix Labs, I worked at Riot Games on League of Legends for a couple of years.
And that is such a behemoth. I was there not too long ago.
No pun intended.
No pun intended, yes,
Yeah.
because you're killing behemoths. But I couldn't believe the size and scale of that company. It was just massive all around one. I've visited studios for 25 years, and I remember, and I put this direct link in my head. I'd go to Sega of America, and they would have 600 people or something like that working there, and they've got this body of published titles, but you could see the scale of it. And then you go to League of Legends, and it's one game, or Riot, it's one game, and it's that big.
Yeah.
And was that the inspiration? Was that something that the founders of Phoenix, Jesse and the other founders, sort of said, the world has changed, and we can ship a title and just keep people as part of this community to keep it growing and growing and growing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always set out to create a live game with Dauntless and with, honestly, whichever game we had landed on.
Yeah.
We saw the ways of how it can work at Riot. And, just the landscape has shifted so much even in the last 5-10 years. No
Yes.
longer are games box products that you ship on a shelf that has to go on a truck that goes to a GameStop or a Best Buy.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you can put your patcher up on your website. You can release updates directly to your players, and even the free-to-play model has been great, just in terms of opening up new doors and getting the game out to as many players as possible. I mean, to your point earlier about Netflix and being nominated and everything, like Netflix and the free-to-play market kind of have done tons for just distribution and getting the game out as broadly and as widely as possible.
Yeah, I mean, what else did we create this mechanism for, the internet for,
Yeah.
rather apart from sharing, communication and art and information like the way that we do, right? And I think that we are still figuring it out, still figuring out pricing, I mean, that's That's one of my things that I talk about on the show all the time, is just like we talk about the economies around games and the scale around games, and the way that publishers and developers are kind of coexisting. And, I mean, we're all acutely aware of some of the travails that the Anthem team is going through right now. It's not easy, but so much of it is trying to find that balance. And it sounds like with you guys, you're still in beta.
Yep.
You're still figuring out, some of the systems, I would imagine. You're still tinkering.
It's a lot of iteration. I'm kind of dominating the conversation here. I'll let Chris talk a bit. But for us, it's about just iteration.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the game will ever be in a finished state for us, in the way that the game, like Dauntless today, is better than the Dauntless of yesterday, which is better than the Dauntless of 6 months ago. And we're just constantly like gathering data, listening to players, having discussions, and just improving the formula.
And that's really I think the advantage and the key strength of that live, always on game affords us, is that we can take our early learnings and refine them continuously, both through what we've learned and from input and communication and the relationship we have with our players.
Right.
A lot of what the core of Dauntless is fairly well known, but how that evolves and what we build around it to support it, really narrowing in on the things that we know our player base loves.
Yeah.
That's a really cool thing. And coming from that box product history, like that was possible before.
Yeah.
And so for us, like especially from a development point of view, the ability to continually improve and iterate and ideate on your ideas is something that's really, really powerful.
And you include the gamers as
Absolutely.
part of that story, right?
Yeah,
and they are also responding, I think, right? I mean, that's what we're seeing with Fortnite and with PUBG and Apex now, is that they're a little more forgiving, and they're wanting this stuff to succeed, so they're putting their.
I think it's all how it's the communication of how we involve everyone who's playing with us. We're all active in our Discord. We're talking to them, playing with them, and it's a conversation. Like, what do you guys want to see?
Does it ever get exhausting for you as developers that have come from? I mean, there must have been a certain sense of satisfaction of shipping a game and saying, that's the way I made that, and I'm walking away from that. I'm going to go work on that now.
I think it's just a different set of challenges. I certainly don't feel any exhaustion from it. Like that is the reason why I want to build games, is so I can see how people react to it. Have them have a good time, have a conversation with them, and go back and make it better.
Right. There's an analogy here with what I do now too, right? Because I came from a lot of television years, and I'm very grateful for that. But I would ship a show, and I didn't know if anybody watched it. I never really talked to people unless I saw them at an event or something. But now, like, we're all building this together. We've got people that are in the chat right now, sort of connecting with what we're talking about, and it feels like media is that now. And I'm very curious about your thoughts on Anthem's launch right now. Without digging too much in there, we don't want to monopolize the time here. But is it a question of can publishers have it both ways? Can they charge box product pricing and also be live and kind of it be in a beta kind of state, still figuring things out, still fixing things? Or would it have been a wiser move for EA to just say, no, this is going to be a free-to-play game?
Yeah. It's super challenging, honestly, especially having come from EA. And honestly, this is kind of like pulling back the curtain a bit. There was once upon a time where we talked about Command & Conquer being a free-to-play game.
Right.
And this was a long time ago, like after Red Alert 3 era. We were like, what would it be like if we decided to do free-to-play?
Yeah.
And we didn't functionally, like design aside, didn't functionally know how to do free-to-play at our scale at that point.
Yeah.
And EA has grown and learned so much, and they're in a much more informed space now. But I think there's other games in the space that have kind of struggled with this as well. I think Destiny and loot boxes kind of comes to mind as well.
Yeah.
He said, being a full-fledged Destiny player, I love that game.
Yes.
I have nothing but the utmost respect for the Anthem guys. Like, we still keep in touch with a lot of our friends who are still at BioWare. And it's just, honestly, it's tough, and it's part of the reason why we decided to do free-to-play in the first place.
Right. And self-published too, right?
Yeah. Well, Epic has signed up to help us distribute our game on console a little bit. So we've been having fun with them the last couple of months.
That's awesome.
But yeah, like, we knew that whatever we shipped into the ecosystem was not going to be the finished game from day one.
Yeah.
We knew that we needed feedback. We knew we needed iteration. And, you know, coming from a game like Mass Effect, where you tell a story and you ship it and that's the story, take it or leave it, we wanted to build in a little bit more flexibility there. We knew the game was going to be punk rock and rough. I mean, at the time we were, you know, 30, 40 people shipping a closed beta.
Yeah.
And we knew we were just going to need to iterate. So we had an honest conversation with our community about it. It was like, hey, I mean, literally when you log into Dauntless today, you'll see, hey, you're playing an early access product.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit crufty. That's okay. We're going to make it better.
Crufty.
Crufty.
That's a great word.
It's a favorite word around the office. And it's all part of the feedback process to help make the game better.
That's awesome. Do you envision a future where games are free? Like that's the way that we get game content in a way that's analogous to the way that we perceive television, which we think is free, but it's not quite free, but it's close to free. Is it subscription coming in and changing
all of that?
Yeah,
you know? Just
all
like
of it?
how we see television and movies and stuff now. Like
There's premium pricing.
yeah, there's
and
a ton of different models, and I think there's room for different types of products and experiences to fit within those. And
Yeah.
same thing for us.
Yeah.
yeah.
I would love it if there was some kind of free-to-play cable subscription for TV.
That'd be pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Epic is thinking about that,
Might be, yeah.
right? You just have your Epic subscription, and then you have this whole.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. We're talking about all kinds of stuff. Oh, we have avoided the topic of what your game is about. We have gotten right
we have
into
the game.
inside baseball stuff. But let's talk about what Dauntless is, and I know you're still defining some of the elements of it, but from a bird's eye, how do you describe Dauntless to people?
Chris, you want to take
Yeah,
that?
I mean, it's a co-op action RPG where you and your friends team up and beat the crap out of giant behemoths. It's all about kicking their butts, getting good loot, and making awesome gear.
Awesome. So it is in the direction of something like Destiny or Anthem, but it's not a shooter. It's more of a fantasy-based experience.
Definitely melee focused. We do have a ranged projectile class, but it's that visceral connection between you and a like superimposing larger-than-life monster.
That's awesome. And how did the idea and the concept sort of take shape and come to be? I know you had a bunch of different ideas, but was it something within a couple of months there was a direction and a clearer concept of this, or was this something that has evolved because of user feedback? Or
Yeah, I mean, the initial concept of a co-op game where you kind of have these longer set piece battles really originated from a time when we all remember, like we all think back fondly on games like Dark Souls and Monster Hunter, and even like vanilla WoW raids, where you know you get your team together, you'd hop on Vent, and you'd strategize your plan of attack, and then there's kind of this longer, like 5 to 10, maybe 20-minute battle that unfolds, and there's multiple layers of strategy and coordination involved, and we really liked that feeling, and we wanted to capture that in our co-op.
And I think as well, looking at, you know, capturing that experience, but having that moment-to-moment, really skill-based, execution-heavy, like in that moment combat.
Yeah.
And you know, we didn't do a shooter, and we're looking at, you know, what kind of genres are out there, what kind of experiences we could build, and that was the one that really stood out.
Yeah.
Are you in a fight for other free-to-play games just by nature of you being classified in there? Like, I know Warframe has a huge community, and clearly all of these battle royale companies and games have huge communities. Are you vying for that same audience, or is it diversifying a little bit more?
You know, it's interesting. When we set out to create Dauntless, we had a very clear understanding of the type of game in the genre. It's, you know, you with a big sword hitting a big behemoth with a couple of your friends. We didn't really think about how the free-to-play space would cross-pollinate with us. Mm-hmm. And in like probably the last year or so, we've actually seen more and more players from Warframe's a great call-out,
for sure.
and Path of Exile coming into the game. And when we talk to them, what we've learned is it's less, to the free-to-play players, it's less important that it's a fantasy game or a melee game or co-op for 4 players. What they want is a fun game that they can play together, regardless of the setting or sci-fi versus fantasy, guns versus swords.
Which is Destiny, right? And Anthem when it's sort of firing on all. I think we don't really talk about that as much when we're talking about free-to-play. And I'm including myself in that discussion as well, right? Like, I'm from this traditional, you know, journalists kind of covering this stuff on a regular basis, and here's something new, and here's something new, and here's something new. But players out there really dig the idea of just sitting back and having that community and sharing something with their pals. And there's a way to develop to that, and that's, I think, what free-to-play is kind of all about in a lot of ways, right?
There's a moment for me, I think for a lot of us, one of the PAXs we were at, and we'd have people come up to us, groups of people, and it wasn't like, hey, you're that new game in this genre with this look. It was like, oh, I heard there's an awesome co-op like experience over here,
right?
A game for like all of us to come play,
right? And
that was what they were gravitating towards. Was like they had their crew, they wanted something that they could dig into and spend months or years on,
right?
And they're like, hey, we heard we should come look at this one,
right?
What do you guys got going on here?
And I guess, you know, you bring up a good point that there is room for all of it, right? We've had an amazing year now with lots of people getting a lot of recognition for their single player games out there, and there's room for that. And there's room for these free-to-play, massive online persistent experiences. Now, the gameplay in Dauntless is you and a crew, or 4 people total. Yeah. But are you affecting the world so that other people will see what's happening if they jump into, like, does the city, the hub city, transform at all based on your exploits and some of the stuff that you are able to achieve in the game?
The biggest thing that you're going to be affecting and showing to other people is what you're wearing.
Okay.
You know, getting your outfit right and making sure your colors are on point and, you know, having that look down. There's a lot of fashion in the city. Okay, cool.
Is there one city, and then everybody ventures out from there, or are you conceiving of other hub environments, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there's one city today, and
yeah.
When I say one, there's call it multiple instances of it. The city can have anywhere from 30 to 40 plus players inside of it.
Okay.
But we've talked about exploring other locales and regions as we expand the game.
Yep.
And we've also launched a couple different events in game that have changed the city. Frostfall comes to mind, where we cover the city in snow. Dark Harvest for Halloween. Most recently, and I think it's still running today, is Saints Bond, which is kind of our more traditional, like, what would Valentine's Day look like in our universe?
Cool.
We're gearing up for season 3, which is coming in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a completely different theme. And every time we launch one of these seasons, it changes kind of everything inside of the game.
I like the aesthetics. It definitely has a cartoony accessibility to it. That was all on purpose. You wanted it to appeal to as many people as possible.
Yeah, it's we debated about going between high fidelity and photorealism and
right.
kind of a more stylized look. And again, because we're a live product, we realized that realistic visuals are only as good as the era in which you build them, and something more stylized could be more timeless and last longer.
And WoW is the perfect example of that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What's been the most surprising part of this progress? Because you guys all are veterans from a different era of games, an era in games that this kind of new free-to-play world didn't exist in, and now it really, really does to great effect. But what have you learned, and what's been the most surprising? Let's start with you, Nick.
The most surprising thing to me, I think, is how players have interacted with the game. The way that we, when you design a game and when you basically build out the journey for the player, speaking for myself, have always kind of thought about it in terms of, like, this is the construct I want the player to go through the game.
Right.
It's like when you land in the city, we've purpose-built, like, the quest board is right here, the main vendor is right here, crafting alley's right here. There's no way you can miss any of it. It's like, we got you covered, don't worry. And the first thing people do when they land in the city is, like, go run and start jumping on the rooftops, and then they fall off the world, or they fall into a sewer, and it's like, the community has helped build so many, like, cultural moments inside of our game that honestly we had never intended.
Right.
And those are kind of like some of the most delightful moments, is like, now there's this, like, ongoing joke where we hide a goat named Benson kind of throughout the game and on rooftops, because people are, like, ever trying to find the next place that we're going to put him.
That's cool. Chris?
I think the veracity with which players will play new stuff and just get all the way through it and get every last bit out of it.
Yeah.
I think it's like, we'll do, a new twist on progression or a new way to interact with this system, and we're like, cool, this time there's lots here. It'll last for a long time. And then a day later, everyone's like, well, I figured it out. and just constantly going back to that. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised at this point. Like, that was always true in box product as well. But
yes.
I was like, damn, you guys, nobody sleeps. Like, you play for 100 hours and less like hours of that in this week. I don't know, how is that possible?
Yeah. No, it's interesting to build on that a bit. I think we've seen a lot of this with the revolution that Twitch and YouTube has brought. You know, to Chris's point, back in like the era of Mass Effect and Command and Conquer, you know, people would play games like Mass Effect used to take. We used to hang our hats and be like, oh, this is a 60-hour game. We got you covered.
Yeah.
And now we have, you know, Twitch streamers who are playing at least 60 hours, 40 to 60 hours a week, trying to create enough content and entertainment for their communities. And it's like
with one game.
With one game.
Yes.
And you know, gone are the days where
that's
like,
also a new element in all of this too, right?
Yeah.
It's sort of all dovetailed into what the video game industry kind of represents now.
Yeah.
Which is really crazy. I interviewed the Fortnite people for many years before that game came out. But the last interview I did with them was at E3 2017, and there was no mention of Battle Royale. There was no discussion. PUBG was taking the world by storm. I don't even know if they knew they were making that Battle Royale mode at E3 2017. I don't even know. They might have, but we didn't talk about it for sure. And then, of course, Battle Royale became their bread and butter. Could you see something like that? Not necessarily you're not announcing a Battle Royale mode in Dauntless today, but could you see something like that, a new mode or a new way to sort of attack this world that you're creating, becoming its own subgenre or its own entity?
I think what you just described, that process of being reactive to how people choose to interact with the toy that you put in their hands is super crucial. Like, we're not talking about anything on that level.
Yep.
But I mean, having that relationship with your players means, you know, sometimes you need to pivot. And if we put something in the game that, like to Nick's point, people play with in a totally unexpected way, there's an opportunity there or a choice for us to say like, oh, cool. No, that's not what we wanted you to do. Or, let's make sure this is awesome and build, you know, more on top of it. So I think that's part of the live service and you know, building the kind of game that we build is just that ability and willingness to be reactive and see where the game goes.
Is there an example of maybe not a Battle Royale kind of level, but is there like, did they ask for a certain size of beast or something? Did you keep hearing about a specific thing and then it eventually became?
The one I go back to all the time is like when we started out, we're like, we're never going to have a ranged class in this game. That's not what we're about. And then everyone wanted a ranged class. So like, we're building a ranged class. And that's, you know, we were wrong. The range class is awesome.
Wow.
It's the most played class. Like, that's a really cool thing. And that's the kind of thing that we couldn't have done in the past.
No. Yeah, and that's such an interesting way to build art. You know, you're building reactive art, which is being, you know, you're learning from the people that are playing the game.
It's that melting pot, right? You have your intuition, your experience in your gut, you have your data, and then you have all the feedback and suggestions and emotions and feelings from the people playing the game. And then you go away and you take those things and hopefully come up with something awesome. And that, for me, is the most, I think, rewarding part of this kind of game, is that there's always a new thing, and there's always you know, a whole bunch of different external and internal stimulus to you know, inform how you think about the problem set.
Awesome. Do you guys play Dauntless with mouse and keyboard, or do you play it with a controller?
Mouse and keyboard.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Is there a skill difference in terms of people being much better if they play with mouse and keyboard?
I don't think so. I mean, we definitely built the game from the start with both, so it's just preference.
Cool. Well, riffing on the controller part there, it's coming to console very soon, this spring.
This spring,
And this will be the year as well that it gets out of beta, right?
Yep.
And it becomes a full 1.0 product. But how much do you envision the core concepts of Dauntless changing as we get to the road to 1.0?
You know, it's interesting. We actually struggle with this a lot internally. Is you know, being a live game. We were just talking before the show that the Dauntless of today is better than the Dauntless of yesterday, or the Dauntless of 6 months ago.
Yeah.
1.0 is like we enumerate our patches. So on a long enough timeline, eventually we're going to hit, you know, 0.0 or 0.9999. Okay, we got to do 1.0, guys. What's it going to do?
Is that nerve-wracking?
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah.
But what's more important to us is that 1.0 in launch conveys a degree of quality and polish and There is a features, like we have a roadmap internally of features that we know we want to get into the game, and we're evaluating like, okay, if we're gonna ring the bell and say like this, we're leaving early access. What are those features? And it's a matter of features and time and staff and what we can get done. Yep. But what's more important to us is that we signal to existing players, to potential players, to really all players that Dauntless is not a finished game, but a polished game. It's ready for you to come and check it out. You can expect high quality from it.
That's the key distinguishing thing there. It's a consistent level of polish rather than we're finished.
Right.
I like a Warframe as an example of a game that's been around for a long time. It continues to evolve and do new things and push what I think people expected that game to be. And that's a great place. That's where we want to be.
It's amazing how much you hear, if you're having trouble with Anthem, just play Warframe, which it's amazing, right? Like
Warframe's awesome. I mean, it's not slept on anymore, but for years that was the game that like secretly everyone played but nobody talked about.
Yeah.
It's awesome that it's getting the recognition now that it deserves.
Well, one of the things that I know to be true with Digital Extremes and with Riot as well is that it's very hard for them as the stewards of these massive properties to pivot and then build something else. Mm-hmm. And is that a concern for your team at Phoenix Labs, that you'll be happily making Dauntless for a long time but not really be able to go off and craft new things?
Yeah. So we have talked a bit about what the future looks like. Dauntless is 100% the focus right now. I mean, we just talked about we need to still do a lot of polish work, but we know we want to be a multi-game studio. We know we want to be doing this together for decades and years until we retire.
Right.
We've started to talk about how do we structure ourselves internally to support something like a second game, or what the future looks like. Nothing formal to announce as of today, but yeah, it's something we definitely have on our roadmap that we know we want to do.
Awesome. And could you conceive of Phoenix Labs doing traditional box product games, or is free to play your viewpoint now?
I think it's tough. I think if we did something like a box product, it would probably still have a free to play version of it.
Mm-hmm. Multiplayer is the key thing there.
Yeah, multiplayer and bringing people together is that's
a company goal, not a game goal, I think. And so building experiences around bringing folks together to play multiplayer games, like that is who we are. And I think that goes further than just Dauntless.
Do you guys think, I mean, this is a little inside baseball here, but I think it's a pertinent question. Do you think multiplayer games should be free? Do you think that the industry should just bite the bullet? And like we had Call of Duty drop its story mode in the last game. The game was great, and the Blackout mode is another terrific battle royale experience out there. Should these games just be free and they figure it out based on the community engagement?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I keep saying it's tough. Games are tough.
Yeah.
I think the thing for me is I'm trying to like channel when I was in the music industry once upon a time, and if you were to tell me that like Spotify was going to make all music free, I'd tell you you're insane, right? Like no one would opt into that.
It is a crazy world, right?
That's where we're at, right? And I think even 5 years ago, it's hard to have that conversation because the hardware hadn't caught up to it yet. And I think we're at a tipping point now where we can have conversations around like game streaming and just stream everything to your console or stream everything to your PC. I think it's really easy for me to point at certain genres like action RPGs or MOBAs or fighting games and be like, yes, that should be free to play. What does it look like in a story-based game where it's like you get the first chapter for free and then you pay $1 a chapter thereout? It's kind of like it starts to break down for me a little bit. So I mean, like I still spend $10 for a full book at the bookstore versus like $1 a chapter. I'm not quite sure.
You're in a bookstore?
No, man. I mean, like on the Kindle store. You know what I mean?
I think it's a business thing, right? Like it'll evolve to be what it's going to be. I think about we're free to play, and that's a thing. And I buy PlayStation games on a disc, and that's a thing too. And I have Game Pass on Xbox, and I'm paying my monthly fee to play single player games there, and those all work. So I think that problem, that'll get solved. I think, you're going to make the games you're going to make, and they're going to fit into some business model somewhere, hopefully. But I don't think, it's hard for me to, as a designer or producer, to sit here and say like, oh, they should all be free.
Yeah.
Because I interact with every conceivable business model, and they all work to different degrees.
And we're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about games too, right? I say this all the time as well. It's like I've been covering the biz for 25 years, and it's not complete. It's not figured out, you know? And honestly, we're seeing that with the movie industry. They're just being it's total upheaval over there. It's almost the inverse of what video games have been going through in some ways. Yeah, interesting. I want to follow this lead, maybe have you guys back on or come and visit you guys, and we'll talk a little bit more about the business and
I'd love to.
And and just get some different insights around all this stuff. But really cool story.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Can't wait to play the game on my console. But I'm more of a console player. But congrats and keep it up.
Thank you.
Chris
Appreciate
and Nick, thanks for coming down.